plans for the summer at all? Gonna break away at all?
Not in the summer. We'll have to see. We
Yeah.
might take some road trips. We have friends who are building a house in Costa Rica. As soon as it's safe to travel, we'll go visit them there. We have a son who lives in California. It'd be nice to visit him, but nothing immediate.
Have you been to Costa Rica?
No.
It's a lovely, lovely country, good people, and very safe.
And their government is just wonderful.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Oh,
That's quite a road trip.
yeah.
Oh, well, we'll share the driving. Excuse me, I gotta close the door here.
Halfway around the world. We have a quorum.
I should look at my whole list here. Oh, it's 7, goodness sake, I'm so sorry. I was not paying a bit of attention. Okay. Come on, gallery view. There, we got it. All right, sorry to keep gadding. Let us call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers, April 22nd, 2021, Earth Day. This meeting is being held electronically due to the pandemic and our determination that it is not safe or prudent to meet at our usual place of business or to invite the public there. It is being conducted in accordance with section 13D-021 of Minnesota statutes and all other applicable terms of the open meeting law. All votes will be by roll call. So the first order is to call the attendance, and Manager Hitchmati.
Here.
Manager Olson.
Here.
Manager Miller.
Here.
Manager Maxwell.
Here.
Manager Loftus.
Here.
Manager Sando.
Here.
Manager White is here. No members of the public here. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the board on a matter that's not on the agenda? Seeing no one, we can move to approval of the agenda. One change is going to be that Manager Hitchmati will give the Metro Mod report. If there's nothing else, then I'd look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Move approval with the amendment.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Is there a second?
Second, Maxwell.
Thank you. Then voting on approving the agenda, I vote aye. Manager Sando,
Yes.
Manager Loftus,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell,
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager Olson,
Aye.
Manager Hitchmati.
Aye.
Thank you. We may proceed. There is an information item this evening. Mr. Beck is going to introduce a new R&M staff member. Mr. Beck.
Thank you, President White, Board of Managers. Yeah, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Froden, who is our new research and monitoring seasonal field assistant for this year. And so she started on April 12th. And so she's had a little bit of time under her belt working with us. She came really highly recommended from a few folks that we knew at different agencies, and she's fit in really well so far and has been able to really figure out things really quickly. So with that being said, I can let her introduce herself and give her a little background about herself as well.
Ms. Froden, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. So, yep, my name is Elizabeth, and like Brian said, I've been here for a little under 2 weeks now. Been doing a lot of really cool stuff already, so I'm loving the district. My background is in geology and hydrology. I have a bachelor's degree from Gustavus Adolphus College in geology and a master's degree in hydrology, hydrogeology, and water resources from Stockholm University in Sweden. Before I joined the district, I was in Minnesota Green Corps, and my placement was with the Pollution Control Agency doing some community outreach work. So definitely a little different from some of my other stuff, but that was also a really cool experience. So yeah, I've been loving the district already. got to do hands-on stuff with stream monitoring right away on day one, which I was very pumped about. And got to start assisting with some cool installs with the stormwater monitoring that we're doing around the County Road 6 pond. So kind of hit the ground running and really excited to be with you all for the season.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Elizabeth, when do the boats go in the water?
I think we're starting lake monitoring in May. Brian's nodding, so.
Yeah, you've got one of the best jobs in the world when it comes to summer cruising.
For sure.
Welcome aboard, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing more of you. Thank you, Elizabeth and Brian.
you.
Moving to the consent agenda, tonight we have approval of the April 8th, 2021 board meeting minutes, approval of the check registers, the general checking account, surety checking account, and wire transfers, and resolution 21029, which is authorization to submit the annual report to Bowser and the DNR. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Manager Sando moves. Is there a second?
Heshmati, second.
Manager Sejmati. Voting then on the consent agenda. Manager Miller,
Aye.
Manager Olson,
Aye.
Manager White votes aye. Manager Sando,
Aye.
Manager Loftus,
Aye.
Manager Hejmati,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
Thank you. My president's report has two prongs, I guess. One is that the 325 liaisons and staff team, our internal group, are working in preparation for the next phase of the developer selection. And one moment here, I've got a note. I can't remember. So there's just one prong apparently. Manager Miller, could you give a policy and planning committee report?
Can I what?
Give a report from planning and policy committee?
Oh, yes. We had a introduction to the annual budget process well ahead of where we normally be. And there doesn't look to be any surprises in what James is recommending for budget for next year. It'll be the 5th year in a row we've not had a levy increase. So we'll spend the next 2 months looking at the various elements of the budget. But we had the first overview today, and it was everybody was enthusiastic about it. If you can get enthusiastic about budgets, I guess.
Thank you. Can you also give a report from the Citizens Advisory Committee?
Yes. One, they said it's the board's job to determine what they do, not theirs. That was after several hours or hours, I guess, of discussion. They want to serve which best address the needs of the district. They want to be useful. They think that perhaps being a sounding board before anything gets to the public and after it's been proposed and reviewed by any technical advisors and consultants, kind of review it from their perspective as both interested in the resources and as taxpayers. So they're looking for us to give them direction. They seem satisfied with what's proposed so far, and they're comfortable with whatever we decide that they should do. They're looking forward to fewer meetings with more meaningful agendas. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Manager Hejmati, can you report on the Metro Mod quarterly meeting?
Yes. The meeting took place on Tuesday, the 20th, and I think there were two of us in attendance. Bill, I think you were there.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I was there. And at some point, I may ask for some help from you to explain some stuff, Bill, or if I missed something, be sure and back me up. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. The meeting began with Emily Javins, the ED, presenting, and she did a very long presentation. Apparently, she has been working as sort of a go-between between Bowser and all the mod folks, helping them communicate and so on, because there's been some friction between Bowser and mod, particularly over the change in the way they've been funding. And there was a funding change that took place over the last couple of years, and there's been a lot of differences of opinion about how that, how Bowser should or should not do that. And so apparently she's been working with that. One of the things she said that, and I'm going to lean on you, Bill, to help me out with this, that she wanted to write a letter to Bowser that was signed by all of the watershed districts, and wanted the board to discuss that in May. And Bill, help me out with that. What was that about?
Right. Essentially, what she had requested is that whenever you want to make change in a government organization like Bowser, you've got to really have everybody unanimously backing it up. And so rather than asking all of us to write our own letters with our own recommendations, she wanted to try to get us together and come up with a single letter that we would all sign on to. So it made sense. And but with this Metro watershed based implementation of funding that they've been struggling with, they've come up with several approaches, and out of the first definitions of how they wanted to distribute the money, 3 of them are so inefficient that we just want them eliminated. And so she went through the things that work and the things that don't work, and then when she suggested that we fine tune the recommendation and then send it back, she did say she wanted to send it back in the form of a formal letter with all of us as co-signers.
So how does that impact what we do as the board, Bill? I didn't understand that part.
Well, it's just our way of talking to Bowser. I mean, Bowser's got this bucket of money, and they came up with a way of handing it out to everybody. And most of the watersheds want to do it based on projects and merit. And they're trying to do it based on distribution in some sort of a general way. And so it's always been a source of conflict for the administrators of each watershed, because they, James has multiple times talked to them about, why do you just hand money out? Why don't you look at the proposed projects, look at the biggest bang for the buck, and then spend accordingly? And but they just want to do something that looks equitable for all watersheds in all locations of the state, and they're still struggling with this idea of how you distribute the money in the metro watershed districts fairly. And so anyway, we're getting closer. She's done a lot of work. She's going to be sending that out to everybody in terms of a review of what we think is a good idea, and then we'll have to discuss it as a group and see if we want to make any tweaks to it.
Okay, James?
Yes, I would just, I think to your root question, Manager Hejmati, in terms of what it means for the board, this is something that the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District board and staff have been tracking for several years. We're in the second, going on third year of pilot funding for what they call watershed-based implementation funding, which is how they're moving towards non-competitive funding for project implementation in the metro region. Our watershed district board has been briefed by Becky on this probably half a dozen times, and we've written a series of our own letters over the years. And in the most recent iteration of dialogue between Maud and Bowser, it's gotten to a level of loggerheads. And so Emily Javins has been coordinating with the Metro Watershed District administrators. It sounds like she gave a very similar briefing at Metro Maud. And as this letter is produced, they'll be looking for watersheds to sign on to it. And our process for supporting policy initiatives at that level is to bring them in front of the board, provide a briefing, and determine on the merits whether or not our watershed district board wants to support that policy initiative. So in terms of what it means for us, we're waiting for that letter. And once we get it, we'll bring it in front of the board for a review and briefing and discussion, and then determining whether or not we support the direction that Maud is headed with Bowser.
Okay, so for the board, then this letter is on its way, and we will be reviewing it shortly.
Yeah, I mean, it's in Maud's court, so we're waiting for them to produce something and
For them
distribute
to
it.
send the letter. Okay.
Once
All
that
right, thank you.
happens,
Thank
we'll be able to route it through our organization.
Okay. Thank you both for the clarification, because I was having some difficulty understanding what that was. Okay. She also gave us a legislative update. Apparently, the legislature has been moving through, has been right on schedule and moving along really well. And there were no, she said she didn't see any negative bills coming into the legislature, anything that would be negative for us. The annual meeting is going to be held at the end of December. And the summer tour, obviously, there's going to be nothing in 2021, but it's going to be in 2022. And my understanding is that we are going to be doing that. And then the next person who spoke was Bowser, and they presented their side of this stuff that the material that Bill and James were talking about, which I personally found confusing. Listening to him was really confusing. He didn't make much sense. He gave a legislative update saying the omnibus bill had passed, and spent some time identifying the funding changes that were involved. The MPCA spoke about their work on the MS4 plan and the fact that they are monitoring water across the state for chloride levels. The next presentation was the Met Council, and they reported that they are also monitoring stream water quality in the metro area. And then there was John Bellotta from the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council, and he spoke about some of the research projects they've done. One that sounded really interesting was a social science project rather than a technical project, which was what inspires community leaders to motivate them to act on water quality. And that might be an interesting research piece for us to look at, to see that. And there was some other projects that they did. And the administrators group, the MAWA administrators group spoke about they're going to be reviewing the policies of state agencies that affect the watershed district. And so that summarizes the MAWA report.
Thank you, Manager Hejmati.
You're welcome. Bill, did you want to add anything to that, or did I get it all?
No, the only one we missed was the local government water roundtable update.
Oh, okay. So please update on that. Is there something you want to say on that?
No, I'm teasing President.
No, okay. Okay.
She was scheduled to give an update.
Oh, okay. Nice.
I was.
You was.
I didn't even know.
I
I
just
think
read your
this,
topic. It's called Local Government Water Roundtable Update.
huh. Well, we're meeting in 2 weeks, so I'll have something to say next time around. I think this is the first Metro Mod meeting I've ever missed, but it was the day that the Chauvin verdict came in and I didn't have the energy to make it happen. So I'm really grateful that the two of you were there. And I empathize with others who are feeling similarly gobsmacked. The upcoming meeting and event schedule is in the agenda. All virtual meetings will have committee and board on May 11th and May 27th. And I am the liaison to Citizens Advisory Committee, which will be May 19th this time. Yep. Then moving to item 10.1, Ms. Barlow has permit 20-591. Ms. Barlow.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes,
Great.
please.
Is my screen sharing working?
Yes.
Perfect. Good evening, President White, Board of Managers. The permit presentation before you this evening is for the City of Shorewood's Glen, Amley, and Manitou Road Reconstruction and Drainage Project, otherwise known as Permit Application 2591. This project meets district rules and is before you this evening based on public request for board review, which was received during the project's published notice period. In this presentation, I'll be providing an overview of the project, a summary of the applicable rules, which include Erosion Control, Wetland Conservation Act, water body crossings and structures, and stormwater management to demonstrate that the project does meet district rules, and finally a staff recommendation. The City of Shorewood is proposing to reconstruct, widen, and install curb and gutter along 3 roads within the Glen, Amley, and Manitou residential area located in the northwest portion of the city. The area is located within the middle of our watershed and spans across 2 sub-watersheds that drain towards Lake Minnehaha. As a closer view, the white box highlights the 3 roads that make up the proposed project. This area is adjacent to the Lake Minnehaha Regional Trail, which you can see to the screen, to the top of your screen to the north, with the city of Tonka Bay on the other side of the trail to the north. Because this project is a linear project and spans a number of roads, I wanted to take a moment and ground the board with an aerial that kind of demonstrates the existing conditions within the project area as a whole. So while this image is a bit zoomed out, it does show Glen, Amley, and Manitou roads in their entirety. Currently, runoff in this area flows overland. This is represented generally by the yellow arrows. There are 3 main existing drainage exit points within the project area. These are represented on the screen in blue. The Harding Lane outlet to the west, the Amley Culvert outlet at the top of the screen, which outlets underneath the trail, and then the South Glen Road outlet to the east. According to the City of Shorewood, this area has been historically flood prone and is experiencing a number of erosion issues as a result. In addition, there are 2 important existing features within this area that I wanted to point out spatially in relation to the project, as I will refer to them throughout the presentation. First is Amley Wetland, which is a district managed 3 wetland. This is found at the north end of the project area, highlighted by the white box at the top of your screen. The second is an existing constructed stormwater basin that is referred to as Gideon's Pond, and this is highlighted by the white star. Finally, this image, which might not translate well to your screen, does provide a formal summary of the existing conditions, as it includes the subcatchments that were used for engineering analysis, as well as drainage ditches that are found in the area. I won't be referencing the drainage ditches in this presentation for simplicity's sake. Further information can be found in the board packet, as these ditches were a component of the engineering and staff review. As previously mentioned, the City of Shorewood is proposing to reconstruct Glen, Amley, and Manitou, widening them, adding curb and gutter, and the associated storm sewer. A new cul-de-sac will be created at the west end of Glen Road as well, under the proposed conditions. The stated purpose of this project is to decrease the volume of runoff through the residential properties within the area to address the historic flood and erosion issues. The yellow arrows again represent a general new drainage pattern that would be a result of the proposed project. In order to meet district standards, as I will discuss in the rule analysis section, the city of Shorewood is also proposing to create a new biofiltration basin to the west of Amley Road, which is the white star on the left, and then expand the existing Gideon's Pond, which is the white star on the right. In addition, a small rain garden will also be created in conjunction with that proposed Glen Road cul-de-sac. Drainage in the area, again, as seen by the arrows, will be routed first through the proposed BMPs prior to exiting the area through those existing outlet points. This will result in a new stormwater outlet to Amley Wetland. And to clarify, this is different from the culvert that currently exists, which outlets that wetland underneath the trail. Again, a bit of a busy image, but it provides the summary of the proposed conditions, formally showing any change in subcatchment areas, the drainage flow, and then also the storm sewer locations, which are in red. Moving on to the analysis of applicable rules under this permit. First is erosion control. The district's erosion control rule is applicable to any project that proposes to disturb, excavate, fill, or grade greater than 50 cubic yards or 5,000 square feet. This project proposes to disturb both of those thresholds, and therefore analysis under this rule is required. On your screen is the erosion control plan. Highlighted is the perimeter control, and then the hatched areas represent locations that would be temporarily stabilized with hydroseed and then permanently stabilized with sod. These are all erosion control specifics that meet district requirements. The specific screen shows Manitou Lane, and then this is the same thing, but on Amley Road. Second is the Wetland Conservation Act. Wetland boundary and type confirmations were first approved in this area in 2019 for the 3 wetlands that are highlighted in the white boxes. A Wetland Conservation Act permit was a second Wetland Conservation Act permit was approved in 2020 for the no loss determination for the project, and also a type reclassification for Amley Wetland at the top of the screen, and then the highlighted wetland to the west near Glen Road. If the board would like to know more about the WACA permit history for this project area, including information pertaining to the reclassification that I mentioned, I can provide additional information at the end of the presentation. However, this project does meet all requirements under the Wetland Conservation Act, and because of the no loss determination, the district's wetland protection rule is not applicable for this project. Next is water body crossings and structures. This rule applies to any projects that propose to use the better bank of a water body, and this project is proposing to create a new stormwater outlet that comes in contact with Amley Wetland, highlighted in the general area in the red circle, and then on the site plan also in red. District engineers have confirmed that the proposed project will not have any negative impacts on the downstream water bodies and will not increase the 100-year high water level of Amley Wetland. As part of the review, the district also reviewed to confirm that any sort of changes in flow as a result of the curb and gutter to the existing discharge points at Gideon's Pond and Harding Lane would not result in increased high water levels of these ponding areas. Recording a maintenance declaration with the district for the outlet structures is listed as a condition of approval for this permit this evening. And as designed, the project meets the district's water body crossings and structures rule. Finally, the stormwater management rule is applicable for this project, as this rule applies to any district project that alters impervious amounts within a project area. Widening and reconstructing these roads and then creating the cul-de-sac will result in an increase in impervious of just above 13,000 square feet, which pushes the project outside of the district's 10,000 square foot linear exemption, and making it so the project is required to incorporate rate and phosphorus control for this additional impervious. Rate and phosphorus control will be provided through the creation of the new biofiltration basin, again to the north of Glen Road, which is the image to the left, and then through the expansion of Gideon's Pond, seen on the right. Also, there will be the addition of a rain garden incorporated into the new cul-de-sac. District engineers have confirmed that the proposed project will decrease rates for the 1, 10, and 100-year rain events and will also reduce phosphorus. It should be noted that in Table 3 of the permit report, which breaks down these rate reductions further, there's a typo in the total existing 100-year rate column. This value is entered into the table as 156.9 cubic feet per section. This should actually be corrected to 113.2 cubic feet per second. But regardless, the project as proposed meets the rate and phosphorus standards required by the Stormwater Management Rule, as both rate and phosphorus are going to decrease. Again, a maintenance declaration addressing the city's responsibility for these stormwater facilities is listed as a condition of approval. In addition to phosphorus and rate control, the proposed project was reviewed under the downstream water bodies and high water level sections of the Stormwater Management Rule. The proposed project will provide protection for downstream water bodies as required. Specifically, this section outlines the district standards of allowable bounce and inundation for each major rain event, so the 1, 10, and 100-year rain events, based on the characteristics of downstream water bodies, as different ones will have different capacities to adjust. Amley Wetland is the only natural managed water body downstream of the project where this portion of the rule is applicable. As I mentioned earlier, it's a managed 3-district wetland, which indicates that there are in fact allowable increases in bounce for the 1, 10, and 100-year rain events. The proposed project does result in a 3.6-inch increase in bounce for the 1-year rain event, and then a 0.36-inch increase in bounce for the 10-year rain event of the wetland. Again, these increases in bounce are within the allowable threshold for a managed 3 wetland. However, based on communication with concerned residents in the area, district staff and district engineers, we went and reviewed expanded information to determine if this increase in bounce could potentially be reduced. Based on the review, district staff and district engineer concur that the increase in bounce has been mitigated to the greatest extent possible. For the high water level portion of the Stormwater Management Rule, the district reviews for freeboard separation from high water levels of water bodies. While there aren't any new structures proposed as a part of this project that would make this component of the rule applicable, there are the existing structures along Amley Road that back up against the wetland. Under current conditions, the existing structures don't have 2 feet of separation from the high water level of Amley Pond, and they historically have not. The district engineer has reviewed this area and confirmed that the 100-year high water level of Amley Pond is not going to increase as a result of this project, and that the proposed project will actually provide a slight amount of additional freeboard for these existing structures. In summary, the project has been reviewed for these 4 applicable components of the Stormwater Management Rule: rate control, phosphorus control, downstream water bodies, and high water level. And the project meets the Stormwater Management Rule as proposed. The proposal in front of the board this evening does meet all applicable district rules. Staff recommend approval of permit 2591 with the condition that a maintenance agreement between the district and the city of Shorewood documenting city responsibility for the stormwater facilities and water body outlet structures is executed. And as a result, the requested board action this evening would be your consideration of permit 2591, the city of Shorewood's Glen Amley and Manitou Road reconstruction. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Barlow. Is there anyone who wanted the additional information that Ms. Barlow offered?
Gene, I just want to what any other response from the neighborhood or the people that live on those areas? I know you talked a little bit about it, but was it all?
Yes, I did have a number of conversations, both prior to the kind of formal start of the project. We had residents reach out to the district to start to gain an understanding of what we will actually be reviewing during the process. And then once public notification went out for the project, I spoke to a number of residents. I believe some of them are in attendance tonight who have concerns, but for the most part, after all these conversations, residents walked away with a better understanding of what the district is and isn't reviewing as in conjunction with this project.
Thank you, Ms. Barlow. There's a Mr. Ang, is it with us?
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Certainly.
Yes, my name is Rich Ang. My address is 25170 Glen Road. I am a resident that is affected by this project. One of my main concerns is that well, let's get right to the heat of this matter, and that's the holding pond fallacy. You know, holding ponds, they only work when they're not full. When they're full, they're no longer working, and solids are not able to drop out. They're in suspension. And this whole entire project, all three streets are getting dumped into, as Ms. Barlow stated, the Amley marsh or the Amley wetlands. So you have an entire project that is going to be ending up in this wetlands for the water, whether it's through emergency drawdown or it's natural overspill. No, I've had numerous conversations with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and I was informed that, you know, the city of Shorewood has through the years used this as stormwater and their grandfather then. But it's my understanding through the Department of Natural Resources that the city of Shorewood is not able today, as all the laws and regulations have been passed since, to enter any more water into this natural marsh. And so I guess my concern and question to the board would be that, one, the current holding pond, Gideon Glen, which exists now that they're going to deepen and expand, it's been full. I've lived in this area for more than 2 decades. I have never in those 2 decades ever seen Gideon's pond, which exists today. The city of Shorewood is going to expand it, make it deeper, make it larger, not full. So if that pond's already in existence and it's already at capacity and full, and it's not even receiving an eighth of the volume it's getting, then the city is going to be constructing 2 more holding ponds. One of them is basically riprap that's actually terminates directly into the Amley. I call it marsh because it's always been a marsh since 1975, and Shorewood's first comprehensive stormwater study by OSB was identified as a marsh. To anything other than a marsh, wetland, I guess, marsh is semantics. But the fact of the matter is that this new bioretention pond, it's going to get full. And when it's full, they don't work. And when they don't work, this water is going to get deposited directly into the Amley marsh. And for all of you board members, this marsh at Amley drains directly into Gideon's Bay. It goes under the Hennepin County Regional Trail and a 48-inch culvert. On the north side of the trail, there is in the city of Tonka Bay, the city of Tonka Bay's infrastructure, they have a 12-inch culvert that drains directly into Gideon's Bay. So tonight I'm asking that some consideration more consideration be given for this, because Gideon's Bay is going to be impacted by this. And I'm well aware of Gideon Bay's water quality, especially with solids and phosphorus and other levels. But the main fact is that, you know, the fallacy of holding ponds, when they're not full, they're great. But when they're full, they don't work. And when they don't work, well, then it all suffers downstream. And this project, 100% of it ends up in the Amley marsh, Amley wetlands area, which drains directly into Gideon's Bay. There is no, once it leaves the Amley, there is no settling. There is no additional treatment. When it goes from the south side of Amley to the north side, it goes directly into Gideon's Bay, Lake Minnetonka.
Thank you, Mr. Eng. Thank you very much. Before I move to asking for any kind of staff response, is there any other member of the public here who wishes to address this permit? Then I'll turn to you, Mr. Whisker, for response.
Yeah, President White, I don't know that I can respond directly to Mr. Eng's concern, but I thought I might help just coordinate the response a little bit. I was taking notes on the concerns as he raised them. Before I jump into that, you had asked if anybody else from the public had comment, and I see the screen titled homeowner has raised their hand. So I don't know if we want to give them a chance to unmute and raise a comment, and I'll just pause again for 10 seconds to see if they want to speak. And as you unmute, if you could provide your name and address for the record, please, before you get into your comments.
Yes, it's Kathy Autumn. I live on Lila Lane, 30 Lila Lane in Tonka Bay. And I'm taken back with all the figures and the drawings and everything. I'll just make it simple that based on your comments in the agenda packet that I got and the memo from Andrew Budd to Grace, basically you're looking at, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking at this generally located from the 48-inch culvert crossing an Amley wetland to the east, where the Hennepin County Railroad ditch is picked up by a 15-inch culvert, which belongs to Tonka Bay, and it goes under the if I'm correct at reading this, it says number 3, wetland is southwest quadrant of Glen Road. This wetland basin has a 12-inch outlet. So because I don't understand all the the drawings and all that, I only see that the culvert is 48 inches and it's going to flow into a culvert in the park, which is owned by Tonka Bay, which is only 15 inches. How is that going to work without flooding the Manitou Park? So again, forgive me if I don't understand. Just let me know what I'm seeing and what I'm understanding.
Thank you for your question. Are there any other residents who wish to speak? Then Mr. Whisker, I'll turn back to you.
Yeah, again, just President White and for the homeowners that have, thank you for taking the time to show up and provide your comment into the record. I'm wondering if we might turn Chris to you, Chris Meehan, the district's engineer, to work with Grace here just for a moment to recap very concisely the scope of the project in terms of change in hardcover, and then what the watershed district's regulating for volume, for rate, for quality and bounce. I hear those at the root of the questions that we heard from the 2 homeowners that just commented. And if you could just frame what the scope is, how the rules apply, and how the rules are met with regards to those capacity, bounce, and quality questions that were just raised.
Sure, Grace, you want to start, or I can jump in right away?
I can address the rule portion of it, definitely. So for the scope of treatment, and I use the term scope of treatment, and by that I mean the rate and the phosphorus control that is required by this project. The district has specific sets of requirements for linear projects, which this project is classified as. based on the increase in impervious, which is around 13,000 square feet, it puts the project in a threshold where they're only required to provide rate and phosphorus control. Volume was not something that was required for this project. And again, that's because of the increase, square foot increase of impervious. It's just in that middle threshold where only the first two are required, if that helps clarify.
I think it does. And so there's 13,000 square feet of new hard cover.
Mhm.
And the Watershed District is evaluating the city's design for meeting rate control requirements, the water quality requirements,
Yes.
and then bounds in water bodies that are downstream wetlands. And Chris, could you just articulate your understanding of how those are being satisfied in response to the comments that we just received?
Yeah, no, I mean, so how the city of Shorewood is looking to address it is kind of highlighted. If you go back there, there you go, Grace. They're going to be expanding a stormwater pond that is adjacent on, which you can see on your right-hand side next to Glen Road and Manitou Road. So they're going to be expanding the pond to add for that volume. They're also then adding a biofiltration basin that you're seeing on the left side, so to help pull water away to help with addressing the rate control component of it, but then also to help improve water quality, that again, all this discharges into Lake Minnetonka, to help pull out the phosphorus from this area to have a reduction in the actual loading of phosphorus. So through those components of it, they're looking to satisfy the district rules. Also wanted to touch base on the homeowner's question about the pond, the piping outside of Amley Wetland, and that it is a 48-inch pipe and does go into Amley Park, and then downstream goes to a 15-inch pipe. The 48-inch pipe is meant to serve as an equalization pipe between the park and Amley Wetland to ensure water levels are balanced between the two of them. And that really the 15 inches meant to serve as the rate control for the system. So it does, while it does seem a little bit deceiving that it's a larger pipe going to a smaller pipe, it's really that it's a slope that doesn't, it's a pipe that doesn't have any tilt to it. So it's really just a balancing pipe between the two areas to ensure the water level is equalized between the two areas. So I don't know, James or managers, if there's other questions, I can continue to go from there.
I would just offer, for the sake of our residents, that Chris Meehan is the district engineer.
Don't have any other questions. I just wanted to take that opportunity to scoop up the comments that we'd heard from the public, ask you to respond to those in a focused way, and then see if turn it back to President White to see if there are questions or discussion from the board. It's based on the engineering design that's been submitted in your review, along with staff, the project's meeting the requirements for no increase of rate in the water quality requirements and the bounds to downstream wetlands.
Maybe to quick, did the two residents understand what Chris and they just informed about?
Then what I would like to do before we get into discussion is ask if there's a motion to approve permit 2591. Managers, is there a motion to approve permit 2591?
Olson, move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Maxwell second.
Thank you, Manager Maxwell. Are there any questions or discussion from the board before we move to voting?
I want to, about 15 years ago, the district did the improvement on that one pond. I don't see it listed on my name on Manitou Road.
In Gideon Glen, perhaps?
Yeah, that's it. How was that affected? And was that designed in such a way to accommodate this additional water? And what's the ownership, whether easement or deed, on that improvement that the district made?
Chris, perhaps you want to speak to the hydraulics of the project and how this relates or does not relate to the Gideon Glen project. And when you're done, I might be able to speak briefly to the project ownership between the district and the city of Shorewood for that project.
Manager Miller, managers, the Gideon Glen project is, if you can't recognize it right now, it's right across to the left of Heartbreaker. You see on the map right now. A small portion of this project does drain and has drained to Gideon Glen, and it was accounted for when we designed the Gideon Glen. The majority of the project is actually downstream from Gideon Glen, and so that's where the portions of the project where you see the improvements is really meant to capture that water that it is able to grab and be able to treat the water before it gets to Lake Minnetonka. So just kind of the hydraulics of how the water got routed around Gideon's Glen.
Thank you.
And Manager Miller, with regards to your question, I think Chris has addressed the hydraulics, that there's natural drainage that has always flowed and will continue to flow to Gideon. This project's not manipulating the Gideon Glen ponds and is in fact downstream. With regards to our ownership over that project, the partnership project with the city of Shorewood, and I believe we retain easement over wetland and upland surrounding the actual pond and perform vegetative maintenance on that facility, but we're not responsible for the stormwater facility itself. The city of Shorewood is.
Are there other questions? Then I believe
President
Rachel.
White?
Yes, Manager Loftus.
I had a question. I think it's for Mr. Meehan, or maybe it's for Ms. Barlow, but curious, the intention of the project is widening the road to, I believe, add curb and gutter. If that's it, curious if we know if that's must happen. You have to widen the road to get the curb and gutter in. And that in fact then is improving the erosion and flooding. Is there any insight anybody has on the intention of Shorewood with the project? It's one question, just curious if we have any understanding of that, because while we might not control volume at this point, they are adding impervious surface, which does impact the area. And then my second question is the 2-foot separation that is not being applied. I just want to make sure I'm understanding, is that because the existing structures are not being altered, or so they are grandfathered in, or is there no improvement or no addition? Why is it, or how is it that criteria doesn't need to be met or isn't applicable? If you could, if someone could explain that to me,
Sure.
I would
Sure.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Manager Loftus, James, I can, at least I'll maybe work my way backward to Manager Loftus.
Chris, perhaps you could take the freeboard question and how our rule is applied to low openings for the residential structures, and then we could then turn to Mr. Buddy from the city of Shorewood to talk about the city's intentions with regards to the road widening and curb and gutter.
Perfect. No. So in regards to the freeboard opening, Manager Loftus, it is an existing structure that is there with the existing water body. And so a goal we had with the freeboard is to ensure that it's not exacerbating the situation. And so when we did our evaluation, there actually are slightly lowering the high water elevation on that site. And given that we're working within the city property and confines of their easement, look to have that be a method to ensure we're adequately addressing the best we can the freeboard requirement in that area. And then
So
with
to be
that,
clear, all of the existing structures have a fixed low opening, and the proposed 100-year elevation that is the measure of freeboard
Mhm.
is going down and freeboard is increasing.
Yes.
Mr. Buddy, could you speak to the purpose of the project with regards to Manager Loftus's question on road widening and curb and gutter?
Yes, the city of Shorewood's intent was to bring the project in up to its city standard for street section width. But through this process, so the city standard street width is 28 feet. Through this process, the city had decided to make some of the roads much narrower, down to 22 feet wide on the west portion of Glen Road and 24-foot wide on the remaining roads of Amley, Manitou, and Glen.
And could you speak to the question about curb and gutter?
So the city's standard is to have curb and gutter on their streets. And so this is kind of upgrading the street from what has been a rural street historically to one that has curb and gutter, largely so that we can better control the stormwater and route it to treatment basins throughout the project.
So I think Manager Loftus taking a stab at stitching together those answers into a composite. It's a street improvement project that is attempting to meet city standards for section, which are 28 feet wide, and put curb and gutter in to direct the water to control points. But they've modulated their street section down to 24 or 22 feet in certain areas. The Watershed District's applied its rules for rate control, total phosphorus, inbounds, and freeboard. And the rates are for 110 and 100-year storm are going down. Biofiltration's been included to meet water quality standards. Bounds criteria and wetlands are met, and freeboard, that's the distance between low openings and 100-year high water elevations, is increasing. So there's more protection within the degree that the models can detect it for those structures.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, then voting on the permit with the condition as stated regarding the maintenance document. Manager Maxwell?
Aye.
Manager Olson?
Aye.
Manager White votes aye. Manager Loftus?
Aye.
Manager Sando?
Aye.
Manager Miller?
Aye.
Manager Hejmati?
Aye.
Thank you. The permit is granted. Thank you to staff and Mr. Meehan, and also to the residents who came and expressed their thoughts about the project. Appreciate it. Our next business item is 11.1, which is the financial audit and fund transfers. We have Mr. Andy Herring here from Redpath and Company.
Thank you. Good evening. Board of Managers. I try to get my screen sharing and talk at the same time here. I think I am set. So I'm here my name's Andy Herring from Redpath and Company, the CPA firm that the district hired to audit its financial statements once again this year. And we've completed our audit and performed the audit in March, met with the management team right at the end of March. We had an executive committee meeting this morning where I presented the audit results, which brings us to the board meeting now to go over the audit results. So I will summarize the audit results here. I won't go into too much detail, but I'd be definitely happy to answer questions as well. So first I will flip to the And I know this is small, so the intention is not to read what I'm pointing out here, but in the near the beginning of our financial statement is the independent auditors report. And what I have highlighted here is our actual opinion on the financial statements. And that is that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, which really means that the numbers and then the footnotes within the financial statements are correct. We don't audit every single transaction, and our goal is not to make sure that every transaction is presented correctly to the penny. That's why it's all material respects, but our job is to make sure everything is significantly correct. So just to summarize there, that's an unmodified opinion, or also known as a clean opinion. The next section of your financial statements, it's the management's discussion and analysis, which is, like it says, that this is management's opportunity to explain why certain revenues or expenses increased or decreased during the year, explain various projects that went on, increases or decreases in fund balance. So you might find some useful information in that portion of the financial statements. It's about 10 pages there. Next is the basic financial statements. There are two sets of financial statements here that governments must follow. The statements 1 and 2 are on a full accrual basis. They present current and long-term assets and liabilities, long-term assets being the fixed assets of the district, long-term liabilities such as debt. Statements 3 and 4 are the balance sheet and income statement on a modified accrual basis. It more looks at they more focus on the short-term financial resources of the district. And these are what you are used to seeing on a monthly basis. Statements 3 and 4. So really on statement 4 there, this shows this is the income statement for the management planning fund for 2020. Just a few things to point out. If you look at total revenues, they were relatively consistent from year to year. You see total expenditures, there was quite a significant increase of about 11.6 million to 14.5 million. But that was due to how a bond refunding transaction with Hennepin County is presented. The payoff of the old bonds is categorized there in that first highlighted line. And thus it's within the $6.8 million of principal, but then the proceeds from the new bonds, the refunding bonds, are down below of the 3.8 million plus the $1,056,000. So you really need to look at that all together to get a better snapshot of what happened during the year. And that is a net change in fund balance of $2,570,000, almost $579,000. And that increase really was the result of fewer projects occurring in 2020 than anticipated due to the slowdown caused by the pandemic. Following the financial statements are the standard footnotes that explain the accounting policies of the district, as well as certain balances contained within the financial statements. They're pretty much the same as last year. I will point out, I'll just stop on one footnote, it is the note on long-term debt. And I know this is small, but there's a paragraph in there with regards to that refunding that Hennepin County did of the bonds. And noted in that paragraph is the refunding really saved over the next 11 years, it'll save the district $835,000. And that's $806,000 if you're to discount those funds to today's dollars. So nice to see that Hennepin County did refund those bonds and you're able to take advantage of today's low interest rates. If you want to really get a nice snapshot of the financial activity that happened during the year, Statement 6 on page, it's numbered page 44 at the bottom, page 48 of the PDF. This presents the budget, the actual amount for 2020, a variance from budget, as well as a 2019 column. And as you can see, revenues came in relatively online with budget. And as I commented before, there's just the one expenditure line item there, debt service, that was well over budget, just because of how that activity is presented. But overall, a decrease of $3.2 million was budgeted, basically the use of previous proceeds, and $2.5 million increase in fund balance was the result. So it's a $5.8 million swing from what you originally budgeted. There is a net pension liability that the district is required to report, but this statement, if you're ever asked about that net pension liability, this statement shows that the district is paying exactly what it's required to pay according to state statute, which is 7.5% of employee wages. And that net pension liability is not something you are required to pay off. Lastly, in the numbers, there's this Exhibit 1, which begins on page 54. And that's just the income statement or the financial activity, all of the revenues and expenses of the various programs and projects the district has ongoing. So as part of the audit, we issue 4 reports. The first is the opinion on the financial statements, which I addressed. The second is a report on internal control. Internal control being the district's policies and procedures, especially related to financial activities. We don't necessarily audit the district's internal control, but if we detect any deficiencies as part of our audit, we'll definitely report those to you. A deficiency, an example might be a lack of segregation of duties, where one individual might have too much responsibility. You want to segregate like who is the approval process from who actually does, I kind of said that in reverse, but you want to segregate the person doing the activity or duty from the person approving the activity, from the person checking the person's work. So there's proper segregation there. Another item you want, of course, is proper approval over expenditures, such as manager, maybe not a board manager, but a manager within the organization approving expenditures. The board itself approves the expenditures. So those are examples of controls. The results, as highlighted there, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control as part of our audit. The next report is a report on legal compliance. The state auditor issues a guide that we complete as part of the audit, looking at compliance with bidding, deposits, conflicts of interest, claims and disbursements, and then a section on miscellaneous provisions. So for example, anytime you go out and bid a project over $175,000, there's a sealed bid process that must be followed. So we're checking to make sure that the procedures were followed and there are no violations with statutes. And based on our testing, we did not detect any instances of non-compliance. And then last is a report from the auditors to the governance or the board of managers. And it's a report of mainly of required communications. I'm just reminding you that there are a few estimates in the financial statements, although nothing too significant. No new accounting policies were adopted during the year. The second page of this report has some nice news to share. We encountered no difficulties when completing the audit. There were no disagreements with management. And in fact, we didn't detect any significant misstatements or items that needed to be corrected either. Overall, a very smooth audit process. The work papers that we asked for were prepared on time and in a nice shape. They were neat, and everything was ready for us to start the audit. So if things went well, the audit flowed smoothly, and AEM receives credit for that along with staff's work to prepare for the audit. I know it's not a small task, and it's for some, it's definitely not a normal part of your job. So it's kind of double duty when it comes to audit time. So it's nice, definitely nice for the audit team, and it helps our job out as well. Then lastly, in this report, just two comments, not necessarily findings, but recommendations. The first one here was in this report last year. There's an old obligation that's recorded to the city of Minneapolis. The district has attempted to work with the city for many years now and really has not received much of a response from the city. So we discussed that this morning, and I think the plan was to reapproach that potentially reapproach the city, or at least evaluate where things stand this year. And the second thing is that the district's holding around $1.6 million of surety deposits. You have a listing detailing all of those deposits held except for about $107,000. This listing does not contain who originally submitted the deposit to the district. And also there's $181,000 of deposits that were collected more than 10 years ago. The 10 years is just a number, a threshold that I selected. It doesn't necessarily mean anything that it's 9 years or 11 years. It's just a commentary that there are a handful of older deposits out there that the recommendation is to attempt to identify those owners to see if the deposit can be returned, if they are entitled to the deposit or not. And I know the executive committee will be making a motion to the board, I believe, to address this issue with the plans going forward. So with that, I definitely be willing to entertain any questions, but overall, again, I'll say a nice audit with a clean opinion and no audit findings.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. Managers, the executive committee, Vice President Bill Olson, Secretary Maxwell, and I recommend to the board that they accept the 2020 annual financial report, and that we request staff to give us a path forward, options to go forward with clearing up the surety deposits payable. We did not make a recommendation regarding the amount owed to the city of Minneapolis. And with that, I would ask for a motion to adopt resolution 2030. Is there a second?
Second, Loftus.
Thank you, Manager Loftus. Now, are there questions for Mr. Herring? If there are no questions, then we'll move to a vote on adopting resolution 2130. Manager Hejmati.
Aye.
Manager Loftus.
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager White votes aye. The audit report has been accepted. We can put off the question about asking staff to do some checking into things for us. And let's move to resolution 2131, which is review and approval of fund transfers. Mr. Whisker.
Yeah, President White, resolution 21031 authorizes the end of year fund transfers and closures. And in that regard, it's fairly self-explanatory. There's a series of transfers that are listed in the resolution by line item. There's a transfer into permitting to zero out the end of year fund balance. All of the other transfers will result in a fund closure. So there's zeroing out Taft Legion. As you know, we're going to close that fund, and that project's now showing up as allocated in capital finance. There's the Highway 101 Causeway transferring out the residual balance now that that project's out of warranty and covered under PMLM, and that project's closed. And we have sunset our aquatic invasive species program formally now, and there'll be a transfer out of $11,000 there to close that fund.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 2132?
Move approval.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Is there a second?
Hejmati, second.
Thank you, Manager Hejmati. Are there any questions before we go forward with the vote? Manager White votes aye. Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
Manager Loftus.
Aye.
Manager Hejmati.
Aye.
Thank you. The resolution is adopted. And then returning to the question about getting some information from staff about the superannuated surety funds. I think we could just do this by simple motion if there would be a motion to direct staff to put together a report outlining how we might proceed to clear up these old deposits.
So moved, Olson.
Thank you, Manager Olson. Is there a second?
Maxwell, second.
Hejmati.
I'll take Manager Maxwell's second. Any questions before we vote? Then voting on the motion, Manager White votes aye. Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager Loftus.
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Hejmati.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And echo Mr. Herring's thanks to staff and our accountants for the clean audit. That's very nice. We'll move to item 11.2, which is resolution 2132. Ms. Damyantish-Lee.
Thank you, President White. I'll share my screen here quickly. And can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Yes.
Great. Well, good evening. And President White, managers, under resolution 21-032, staff is seeking authorization to amend an existing contract with Stantec for design and construction oversight of the Wasserman Lake and Wasserman Pond island treatments. As the managers are aware, the planned alum applications will provide both a follow-up treatment for the Wasserman Pond, the small 6-acre pond, which is part of the Wasserman Lake Preserve site, and also the first of 2 planned alum treatments for Wasserman Lake proper within the 6 Mile Creek Halsted Basin watershed. And if successful, the combined alum treatments are projected to reduce internal phosphorus loading to Wasserman Lake by an estimated 90% for a reduction of 336 pounds of phosphorus per year. And this reduction positions Wasserman Lake to be removed from the state of Minnesota's impaired waters list. These alum treatments, which are funded in part by 2 Clean Water Fund grants from the Board of Water and Soil Resources, totaling $379,000, are the culmination of an 8-year effort to implement a comprehensive restoration strategy around Wasserman Lake, which has included carp removals and construction of a carp barrier, bringing carp biomass in Wasserman Lake below that targeted 100 kilograms per hectare threshold. And it's also the development of the Wasserman Lake Preserve Park project, which will be completed in June. And this addresses the internal loading of phosphorus in Wasserman Lake as the final step in this kind of multi-pronged effort to protect and improve water quality and also support ecological integrity in the subwatershed. In addition to the significant grant funding, the effort to implement the alum applications has also been strongly supported by both the Wasserman Lake Association and area residents. And the Lake Association really has been instrumental in our efforts to engage the community about the alum applications and the district's work more generally. You'll recall that the design of the alum treatments was informed by the significant water quality monitoring and sediment phosphorus analysis that was performed by district research and monitoring staff throughout 2020. And following this data collection and analysis by staff, the district entered into a design and construction oversight contract with Stantec, formerly Wank Associates, to develop protocols and specifications for the alum treatments and to eventually provide a limited amount of construction oversight during the applications. On March 25th, the Board of Managers authorized staff to accept quotes from Clark Aquatic Solutions and enter into contracts for the alum treatments. But in staff's recent coordination with both Stantec and Clark to plan the operations for the treatments, we've identified a need for Stantec to expand its role in construction oversight. And this is really based on staff's desire to ensure that the treatments are implemented to our strict specifications and that the contractor really has any and all supports they might need during the applications. Fortunately, the accepted quotes from Clark are lower in cost than the engineer's estimate, so there is adequate grant funding that can be applied to this additional construction oversight cost, and that is detailed in the table here. Stantec's construction oversight scope will be expanded to include monitoring of water chemistry characteristics throughout the treatments, and also review of daily application logs. And then Stantec's on-site observation will be adjusted as needed, and costs will not exceed $15,600, which again is covered by the grant. In terms of next steps with board authorization, the Stantec construction oversight contract will be amended to include the scope of work that's included in your packet. Over the last few weeks, staff has been in coordination with the contractor to set a start date for the applications and also to acquire necessary permits from Carver County for traffic control and also the Minnesota DNR for use of the public boat launch on Wasserman Lake. Once the firm schedule is set, staff will be providing information on timing as a follow-up to the community meeting that was held over the winter. And we expect the treatments to begin within the next 1 to 2 weeks, depending on water temperatures. And so in closing, staff is requesting authorization to amend the Wasserman alum design and construction oversight contract with Stantec. And I can take any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 2132?
So moved, Olson.
Olson moves. Is there a motion to second? I'm sorry, is there a second to the motion?
Second, Sando.
Manager Sando seconds. Any questions for Ms. Damjanovic-Lee before we move to voting?
President White, I have a question. This is
Go ahead,
Manager
Manager Loftus.
I'm curious what changed as far as what we believed we needed for oversight originally and what value we might get from additional oversight. And I guess I'd also ask for a little commentary on whether it was considered if the remaining budget might be used for some sort of improvement versus additional soft costs.
Manager Loftus, managers, it's a really good question. So a couple things led us to determine that this additional construction oversight might be necessary. First is this is a particularly busy time for our district research and monitoring staff as they're getting monitoring up and running. And the original construction oversight was going to be kind of heavily managed by district staff. And with their workload right now, it's really helpful to have Stantec available to provide this construction oversight as it's needed. We might get into construction and the alum applications and realize that the contractor is moving along swiftly and there's really not much oversight needed. But we wanted to make sure that that was available in case that does occur. Secondly, we've not worked with Clark Aquatic Solutions previously. They're a newer company to us. And despite their work with other organizations, we just want to make sure that this treatment goes smoothly. It's a high profile project. It's our first really significant large water body alum application. And so we just want to make sure that we're kind of there if they need us for sure. And then I'll say too that because these projects are grant funded, we're pretty restricted with what we can do with the grant funding. And so the grant funding will cover the alum applications itself as well as construction oversight. And so those are the two costs that could be covered. And so with the available grant funding, that's where we're putting the costs. I'll say too, with that, the additional grant funding that we have is to cover both the 2021 and the 2022 alum applications. So if additional alum treatment is needed with that 2022 application, we'll still have plenty of funding to cover that hard cost.
Thank you. Just in follow-up, is there no percentage or breakdown for that grant funding? Sometimes, you know, they'll only allow your soft costs to be, you know, 20% of a project or so. Do we know that they're comfortable increasing that? Have you checked into that and made sure that's fine?
Manager Loftus, yes. The grant will cover both hard costs of the application, the construction cost itself, as well as the construction oversight.
Thank you. Manager Miller, did you have a question?
No.
Other managers have questions? Thank you for your question, Ms. Manager Loftus, and your answer, Laura. On approving resolution 2132, Manager Miller?
Aye.
Manager Olson?
Aye.
Manager White votes aye. Manager Sando?
Aye.
Manager Loftus?
Aye.
Manager Hijmati?
Aye.
Manager Maxwell?
Aye.
The resolution is adopted. Thank you for that information. And then the last item on our agenda tonight is the administrator's report.
Yes, thank you, President White. Managers, three quick updates here. None of them I think constitute new news, so we'll tick through them rather quickly. As you know, we've made application to the Legislative Citizens Commission for Minnesota Resources, the LCCMR, for the two-dimensional model build. A brief update here. We met with Joel Carlson, the Watershed District's government relations consultant recently, Brian Beck and I, and have asked him to begin conducting targeted outreach to legislators for our application. So his office is going to be taking the lead scheduling those meetings. As those meetings are set, we'll be operating at the whim of the legislators' calendars. Brian Beck, President White, or myself will attend those meetings as available with the ultimate goal of securing a hearing, and we'll keep you posted as those meetings happen, what we hear, and ultimately, hopefully, leading up to their vote in June, deciding which project proposals get a hearing. On Blake Road, there is not a lot of new news here either. I think just to refresh everybody's memory, the development RFP was released to a list of 5 developers March 17th. We got questions back from the developers, and we've developed answers to those questions that are being distributed. The deadline for proposals, May 5th. Those materials, those questions and answers are coming your way. We haven't lost track of that. Gabe should have those out, if not tomorrow, Monday, so that the board can track along what the development community is asking and how we're responding to those. Next steps will be a joint liaison meeting, which is scheduled for May 4th to run through the proposal review, and then continue to work on the winnowing process through interviews and the subsequent steps that are outlined in our cooperative agreement. And I'd mentioned previously, we've conducted a series of follow-up meetings with Hennepin County, Three Rivers, and others to discuss the details of their potential partnership. Still in the works of scheduling a follow-up meeting for the Met Council, which I think is sometime next week. The next thing that you're going to see in terms of material coming before you, other than the listening session, or other than the question and answer material that will be sent to you via email, HDR and Gabe are preparing a synthesis of the listening sessions and the survey. And Gabe and Mike are going to present that at the May 13th board meeting, along with a status or pulse check on the development RFP process. And then finally, despite us getting little bits of rain here and there, we continue to have a pretty dry spring coming out of the dry fall. And believe it or not, Grays Bay Dam does remain closed on Lake Minnetonka. The water level out there is 929.2 feet. So we're sitting about 2.1 inches below the ordinary high water level of 929.4. And the creek discharge continues to go down with each of my briefings. We're sitting at 13 cubic feet per second now, down at Hiawatha Avenue. The Lake Nokomis Weir is open. And the 7-day forecast predicting only around an inch of rain. So we'll be reassessing where we sit after we get some more precipitation. That concludes the admin report here for April 22nd. See if there's any questions about any of that, or other things that you want to learn a little bit more about.
Any questions for Mr. Whisker? Thank you, Mr. Whisker. We are adjourned.
Good evening.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good job, James.
Take care, Steve. I'll see you tomorrow.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye.